Family. You don't get along with everyone. Is that a secret? Neighbors don't get along. So this is all suffering. Now, I have a question for you. Anyone here doubt that old age brings unhappiness? Anyone? No? All sure? Agree? Okay, old age. Death. All in agreement that it brings us unhappiness, sadness, takes away our happiness? Yes? Disease. Yes or no? Yes. Old age, disease, decay, and death. Now, the Buddha speaks of suffering, does he not? 4 Noble Truths. You will have heard this countless times, more times than there are hairs on your head. What? The 4 Noble Truths. What are the 4 Noble Truths? Suffering. More suffering. Even more suffering. And lots more suffering. Yes? That's what Buddhism is after all, right? It's just a pile of suffering. Suffering, 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 suffering. Did he really not have anything better to do than just talk about suffering? A lot of other religions, they talk about being happy. They talk about joy. Joy in the heavens. Happiness in the heavens. But the crux of Buddhism is all about suffering. When the core of most other religions is about what? Happiness. But the core of Buddhism is what? Suffering. You picked the wrong what? You wanted to be happy, and you have picked a religion whose crux, the center, the middle, that most fundamental philosophy is about what? Suffering. How do you think you're going to be happy then? You picked the wrong class. You came to the wrong school. You've heard of the Buddha in his first discourse say what? Jati Pacchaya, Jara, Marana, Shoka, Parideva, Dukkha. Oh my God. On and on and on and on about what? Just suffering and suffering and suffering and suffering. Is that not exhausting? So much suffering. Why can't we be happy for once? Let's talk about happiness. So you all agree, death, or rather disease, decay. Most of you will probably think, no, birth, that's surely happiness. Birth is happiness, right? Being born is happy, right? Don't just nod your head because I'm saying so. Remember, I was a very materialistic, very speculative person. I didn't take anything for granted, and I don't want you to take it either. Just because it's a Swami Nuhanse preaching a sermon. I say the Buddha was great, and you go, yeah, the Buddha was great. You don't know the first thing about the Buddha. I say life is all suffering. You go, yep, has to be. But what do you want to do tomorrow? Live life. Why? Be happy. So why did you nod your head then? This is why I say, don't take anything I say, not one word, because I'm a monk, because there's a statue of the Buddha on my right hand side, because there are other monks here, because you are in a monastery, you're in the presence of the Sangha, because you're clad in white, because it's the right thing to do, because you shouldn't argue with the monk, it's not right, it's wrong. You have to agree every time a monk says something. You're never going to attain Nibbana that way. You're never going to seek happiness that way, because this is what you did with everyone else that came and tried to teach you happiness. You didn't question. You did what? Yep. Absolutely spot on. That's what I have to do as well. That's where you went wrong. So don't do the same thing again. Death, disease, decay. Let's leave birth to aside for a moment. Death, disease, decay. brings us happiness or sadness? Takes away your happiness? Yes or no? Yes. And the things that the Buddha said, Jatipachya jara, disease or decay, marana, death, shoka, sorrow, parideva, lamentation, despair, frustration, discontentment. All of these things, is it new to you that these things are suffering? Have you only just realized that death is suffering? Thank heavens you came along to this sermon, right? All this time you thought death was what? So good and joyful. And all of a sudden you've just learned, no, death is suffering. Oh. Have you only just realized that? Have you only just realized that disappointment is suffering? Frustration is suffering? Taking away something that you own, something that you like is suffering. Have you only just realized that? There's a baby in a cot. It's got a rattle in its hand. You pull it. What's it going to do? Cry. Why? Because the baby has understood the 4 noble truths. Right? You go to a funeral. It's your neighbor. He's a Christian. Mother's died. The poor guy's crying, his eyes out. He's realized that death is suffering. Because he's realized what? The 4 noble truths, hasn't he? You go to the hospital. There's a man in bed. He's fighting for his life. He's struggling to stay alive. He's got a cancer. You sit by his side. Hey, mister, what's up? I've got this cancer. I'm dying. This is why I'm crying. I'm going to lose my family. Everything I worked so hard to own, all of that is going to be lost. When are you dying? Tomorrow, the doctor said. He's crying. So, he has realized that death, disease and decay is suffering. Has he not? This is why he's crying. So you think, surely this guy has understood the 4 noble truths. You ask him, what religion are you? He says, I'm a Muslim. He's realized the 4 noble truths, hasn't he? Well, what about you? Have you not cried in your life? In the face of death? In the face of disease? In the face of decay? In the face of losing something that you own and you like? Someone's stolen it? When you lost your girlfriend, when your girlfriend gave you the boot, how did you feel? Yay! Is that how you felt? No, if that's how you felt, then you gave her the boot before she did. Only you forgot to tell her about it. There will be those among you who will have lost your parents by now. You're never going to see them again. Did you not cry? Did you not weep for days on? Why? Because you understood the 4 noble truths. Yes? Siddhartha, Prince Siddhartha, when he took that journey with Channa, his minister, on the chariot, going round the kingdom, he saw some things, didn't he? What were some of the things he saw? He saw what? An old man, a sick man, a dead man, and an ascetic. Put the ascetic aside. He saw the other 3, didn't he? And then what did he do? He asked Channa, what's going on here? Doesn't make sense. Channa says, old man, sir. Sick man, sir. Dead man, sir. What do you mean, old man, sick man, dead man? Channa must have asked, what do you mean, what do you mean? This is what's going to happen to you. This is going to happen to me? Yep. It's going to happen to you. To me? A prince who is destined to own half this land, half this country? I am destined for this? Do you not think that would have been the conversation between them because they were so close? Surely you're kidding me, right? Anyone who lives with their parents know that parents age. No matter what they do in terms of cosmetics to beautify themselves, surely, at least a grey hair. And someone who is as intelligent, so witty, so clever, like Prince Siddhartha would have gone and asked, Father, what's that hair on your head? Why is it a different color to every other hair? Would he not have asked such a question? Of course he would have asked. The point being, when he saw these three sights, did that not shock him? Did he not feel fear? Did he not feel a deep sense of sorrow when he realized this is going to happen to me as well? Did that bring him happiness or sadness? Did that not take away his happiness? That's because he had realized the Four Noble Truths, right? Think before you answer. I'm talking about who? Prince Siddhartha, not the Buddha. Is that because he had realized the Four Noble Truths? Well, what did he do then under the Bodhi tree? Why did he go and spend 6 years as an ascetic if he had already discovered the Four Noble Truths? Do you get my point? Then, why does Buddhist philosophy talk about death being suffering, disease being suffering, aging being suffering? Is that the suffering that we really need to talk about? Is that the suffering that we need to ponder and consider and contemplate? You go and talk to a Muslim man, he says, I'm going to die tomorrow with my cancer. I'm suffering. That's not because he's understood the Four Noble Truths. And like you say, sir, from a young age, Prince Siddhartha would have experienced some form, at least he would have had a headache or a fever. That would have brought him pain. But at that moment when he was going out with Channa and he saw those sights, that was when it really hit him. Like a poisoned arrow, it hit his heart. It was like a groundbreaking moment. This is going to happen to me and I really, really, really need to do something about this. But had he realized the Four Noble Truths by then? No. That being the case, then you tell me and give me an intelligent answer. The first noble truth of suffering is that death is suffering, disease being suffering, decay being suffering, old age being suffering. Is that the first noble truth of suffering? Can it be that? Is it even possible that the first noble truth of suffering can be death, disease, decay, old age, despair, resentment, frustration, lamentation, sorrow, weeping? Can it be that? Can it? Think. Can it ever be that? No. Because if that were the case, the Bodhisattva would not have had to bother all that time alone. He should have just gone and asked a Muslim man. What suffering? Disease, decay, old age, death. Oh, thank you. I'm now a Buddha. Do you realize then, ladies and gentlemen, that the first noble truth, and the second noble truth, and the third noble truth, and the fourth noble truth, what is that? Suffering, lots more suffering, and a great deal more suffering. That's how you see it, right? All Buddhism is talking about is suffering, 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 suffering. But that's not the suffering that you've been experiencing in your life all along. When the Buddha attained Buddhahood, he proclaimed, he said, never, ever before have I understood suffering. This is the first time in samsara that I have understood suffering. In this world full of its humans, devas, brahmas, demons, there is no one without my help who will be able to understand suffering. Is that why when you go to the cancer hospital, that man who's gasping for his breath, who's going to be dying tomorrow. He's crying because he's going to die tomorrow. Did he seek refuge with the Buddha? Had he taken instruction from the Buddha? No, he's a Muslim man. He's a Christian. He's a Hindu. Then that's not the suffering we need to talk about. That's not what suffering is. That suffering we all know. We've all felt. We've all experienced. The suffering that the Buddha talks about is not a suffering that you can experience. That every man and dog can. Yes or no, sir? Every man and dog, every beast, every animal, every bird, can they not all experience that kind of suffering? When a dog is about to die, when a dog's been shot in the head, what does a dog do? Laugh? When a dog is hungry, what does a dog do? Laugh? No, it's crying in the language that it knows, which is barking, but it's crying. So why does a dog cry when its litter, when its puppies have been stolen from it? A female dog, why does it cry? Because it's understood the Four Noble Truths. Can that be the case? No, this is a dog. So then the Four Noble Truths is not about that kind of suffering. It's a completely different type of suffering. Because that suffering is not something to be experienced. It's a suffering that has to be seen through wisdom, through intellect, through intelligence. Actually, no, wisdom is the best term for that. Prajna. Prajna asset. You have to see, not experience suffering. You will have to experience suffering if you don't see suffering. If you have seen suffering, you will be able to stop the experience of suffering. I will give you an analogy to really help you understand this. Our regular listeners will have heard me say this before. There's a man. He's sick. He's sick how? He's got a stomachache, he's got a headache, and he's got a rash all over his body. It's pretty bad. He's in a very serious condition. Diarrhea, migraines, and eczema all over the body. So much suffering. Yes or no? Yes, you will have experiences in some way, shape or form. No one here has never had a headache in their life. No one here can have not had a stomachache or a rash on their body. Each of us have gone through this experience. So there's a man who's suffering. He's crying. He's weeping. A friend comes along and asks him, "Hey, what's up?" He says, "Look at me. I really can't bear this pain. I've got a really griping stomachache and a splitting headache. And this rash all over my body, I just can't stop scratching myself, but every time I do it, it's going to start oozing. I'm in such a state. I can't bear this pain that I'm in right now." This friend, having listened to this man, says, "Oh, you're lucky you met me. Don't you worry. I had the same symptoms. I had the same symptoms and I've been taking this cough syrup. Or rather, I've been taking this gripe water, which is a really good cure for a griping stomachache. I've got this paracetamol, it's going to cure your headache. And I've got this ointment, if you apply it on your body before bed every night and every morning, then it's going to take away the symptoms." This man says, "You're right. I'm so glad I met you. Can you leave me some of that with me? Some of that medicine with me?" He says, "Of course, here you go." So what this man does now is he starts taking the tablets, he starts taking the gripe water, and he starts applying the lotion on his body. A week passes by. Symptoms start to disappear. At the end of 2 weeks, all those symptoms that he was suffering from previously have gone away. Has the disease been cured? We can find out. How? All he has to do is stop taking the medicine. Isn't that the best way to find out if you've been cured? Stop taking the medicine. So he decides to find out if he's been cured. He stops taking the medicine. No more gripe water, no more paracetamol, and no more ointment. 2 days pass by. What happens to the symptoms? They come back. Sure as hell, they come back. The headache's back, the stomachache is back, and the rash is coming back all again. So then tell me, when he took those medicines, did he cure the disease, or did he only just address the symptoms? Just the symptoms. The friend that came along and suggested that he take these medicines did so because that's all he knows. He had the same symptoms, and he took the same medicines, the same pills, the same drugs. And he's been treating his symptoms all along. What he forgot to say is, don't stop taking them. Ever since I started taking them, I've been taking them every day. If you stop it, they're going to resurface. That he forgot to say. So now these symptoms have come back again. Again he's in bed, but he's taking the pills. And this time round another friend comes along and asks him, hey mister, why are you taking these pills every day? On your bedside, there's every time I come along, you've got medicines. What's the problem? And then he says, well, I've got this headache, I've got this stomachache, and I've got this rash all over my body. The reason you can't see it is because I'm under medication. I'm taking these drugs. He says, how long have you been taking them? Well, ever since I met my old friend. For how long do you have to take them? For how long? Forever. Forever I have to take them. How do you know? Well, I stopped it 2 weeks after the symptoms disappeared, and what happened? Came back. Oh. Then this man says, aren't you glad you met me? He says, my dear friend, this is the best bit, so pay attention. He says, my dear friend, I was just like you. I had these symptoms. I had a splitting headache, a griping stomachache, and a rash all over my body. And just like you, I met the other friend as well. He said, take these medicines, and which I did. To the letter. I followed the prescription to the letter. And 2 weeks later, sure and short, all my symptoms disappeared. But then I experimented, I stopped taking the pills, and guess what? 2 days later, they all came back. So I continued taking them. But one day I realized, this has to stop. This just has to stop. This is not a cure. This is just plastering on the surface. So then I went to the doctor. And the doctor sat down in front of me. He examined me. He took an X-ray. He took a blood sample, a stool sample, a urine sample, and all types of samples that a doctor can take. And then finally he came back with the results and said, my dear man, you have ingested the bacteria. This bacteria has gone inside your body and it lives in your guts. That is the disease. What you are experiencing are the symptoms. It's not the disease. You're experiencing the symptoms. So now this doctor writes down a prescription. Tell me, on this prescription, what might you see? Paracetamol, griping water, lotion, or antibiotic? What might you see? Antibiotics. Why? What is the doctor giving this prescription for? To treat the symptoms or to treat the disease? To treat the disease. The doctor says, take this prescription for another 2 weeks, and the man follows this to the letter. He followed it to the letter. 2 weeks later, the symptoms have disappeared again. So what does he do? Let me check if I have been cured. He stops taking the antibiotics. A day passes by, 2 days pass by, 3 days pass by, week passes by, a fortnight, a month, 6 months. He's been cured, hasn't he? Because he treated the disease or the symptom? The disease. This is the suffering that the Buddha talks of. There are two types of suffering, ladies and gentlemen. One type of suffering are the symptoms of the disease. The second type of suffering is the disease. Symptoms of a disease we have all experienced. We all know how painful symptoms of a disease are. Yes or no? Yes. But does everyone know the ins and outs of a disease? No. This is why we go looking for whom? A doctor. A doctor who has gone through his study, 5 years worth of medical college, and then whatever exams that follow up, and then practicing, and then he understands the science behind this. When you go in front of the doctor and say, it hurts, he says, yeah, okay, I get it, but that's not why you're here, is it? We've got to treat the disease. The suffering that the Buddha speaks of is the suffering or the disease that the doctor gave the prescription for. The suffering that we just talked about 10 minutes ago, death, disease, old age, decay, frustration, lamentation, sorrow, despair, losing things that we like, having to associate with people and things that we don't like. These are diseases or symptoms? These are all symptoms. Each and every one of them is a symptom. Avidya pacca sankara, sankara pacca viññāna, viññāna pacca nāmarupa, nāmarupa pacca salayatana, salayatana pacca passa, passa pacca vedana, vedana pacca tanha, tanha pacca upadana, upadana pacca bhava, bhava pacca jati, jati pacca jara marana shoka parideva dukkha domanasa eva metassa kevalassa dukkha khandassa samudayo hoti. Avidya to jati, disease. Jati pacca jara marana shoka parideva dukkha domanasa, symptoms. Did you get it? Avidya to jati, disease. Jati pacca jara marana shoka parideva dukkha domanasa eva metassa kevalassa dukkha khandassa samudayo hoti, symptoms. Tell me, all your life, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 years, which one of these two have you been treating? Disease or symptom? How long did that man have to continue? Does that man have to continue taking the paracetamol tablets? For? Ever. How long does this man have to take this griping water? How long has he got to apply that lotion on his body? For? Ever. What happens if he stops taking them? Symptoms resurface. Now go back to the hospital, cancer hospital, man on bed, struggling for his life. Doctor has said, death tomorrow. Is he suffering from the disease? Is he complaining about the disease or the symptom? Is he complaining about the disease or the symptom? Symptom. Why? Jati pacca, jara, marana, shoka, parideva. Jara is disease or decay. Marana, death. What's he complaining about? Death. Death is what? Disease or symptom? Symptom. He's complaining about the symptoms. What about next door guy who said he was a Christian? He's crying his eyes out because he's lost his mother. What's he crying about? Disease or the symptom? Every time in your life so far, every time you shed tears, every time you got angry, every time you wept, did you cry because of the disease or the symptoms? Your child broke a leg. Child starts crying. Now you start crying. Are you crying because of the disease or the symptom? Symptom. You have to go to work. You don't like it. You're complaining. Disease or symptom? Disease or symptom? Symptom. You try to start your car. Car doesn't start. Broken down. Disease or symptom? If you're suffering because of that. Disease or symptom? Symptom. You got a runny nose. Really annoying, isn't it? When you have a runny nose and it's gone all sore and red like a parrot's. Now you're complaining of the disease or symptom? Symptom. Do you realize, ladies and gentlemen, that all your life you've been trying to fix symptoms? You're hungry. Disease or symptom? Symptom. You're feeling cold, shivering. Disease or symptom? You got a fever. Disease or symptom? Symptom. You've just been bit by a mosquito. Disease or symptom? Symptom. What does science help you do? Treat the disease?